Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. So I'm doing another response video to an email I received. This was a couple of weeks ago, but the emails have been piling up over a period of time. And so I just decided to respond to most of these via video because a lot of these are repetitive. So hopefully these will answer a lot of people's questions, not just this one individual. Here is my email if you do want to contact me. And the emails that sort of fall into a broad category, I will create a response video for. So I didn't create the snapshot for this, so I'm just going to read it off my iPhone because I forgot to do that. So I'll just read the best pieces. Also, the email's a bit long, so I don't want to read the whole thing. So, hi Dan, thanks for all your tutorials. I'm writing today about employment advice. I graduated from a bootcamp, 3-month bootcamp, full stack web developer bootcamp, and am having trouble finding a job. I will admit that I definitely struggled through the course as it moved very quickly. Blah, 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 blah. He goes on to explain some more of the course. So now I am desperate for any and all advice for a beginner developer to get hired. I worked my ass off waiting tables and bartending for over a year to save up for the course, and now it seems like it's all for nothing. It's heartbreaking. I'll be damned if I have to go back to that kind of work. So to recap, he did a 3-month boot camp. He went through it, although he said he struggled, and then he's having trouble getting a job. I guess the interviews aren't going very well. Prior to the boot camp, he was a bartender, and he did that for over a year, he says, to save up money for the boot camp. And then the last sentence of the email is, what can I do to interview better? What should I practice to improve my skills for a front-end developer job? Did I make a mistake, etc., etc. Okay, so on the surface, it sounds like this is a similar question as to the one I received yesterday, where I explained to another individual who failed a coding interview challenge how to deal with that, how to handle that. And so on the surface, this seems like it falls into the same category, but there are some differences here that are worth noting, that I think warrant a different kind of response. So he did a boot camp, three-month boot camp. Struggled through the course. Let's see what else. And prior to that, bartended / waited tables for over a year to save money. Okay. And he says he's now running out of savings and he might have to go back to that, and he really is not looking forward to that. Very understandable, and I empathize with the situation. Now, if you watch yesterday's video, I'll punch it up so you know which one I'm referring to, because maybe you didn't see it. If you look at my videos from yesterday, this one right here, coding challenge disaster. Okay, so if you punch this guy up, you'll see that I give a reply saying, like, how should you respond to failures in this scenario? How should you handle it? How should you interpret it and adjust? This may seem like a similar question, but like I said, there's some nuance here that's worth getting into. So one of the things that I try to explain to people is whether or not you're even cut out for this industry. And from what I gather, this individual may not even be cut out to be a programmer. He may have made a mistake spending all that time and money on a boot camp, only to come out the other end unable to find work. And it's getting to a point where even if he does find work, it's probably not the kind that he envisioned while taking the boot camp. It probably won't be the high-paying 6-figure plus jobs in Silicon Valley or Amazon or Google or whatever. It might be just some shitty WordPress dev shop where he gets paid 20 bucks an hour, or if he's full-time, it's like $30,000 or $40,000 a year, depending on his location. And it just might not be what he thought it would be. I mean, you can probably clear around $35,000, $40,000 a year waiting tables, and certainly bartending, because bartending does very well in tips. So he may have made a mistake. So here's how you can kind of make those, draw those conclusions. So one thing you have to be acutely aware of is, what was your life like before programming was even a part of it? Okay, so a lot of the people who go into this go into it sort of later in life, after college, right? So assuming you're not one of those people who started programming from the age of like 10, right? So what was your life like before programming? And more specifically, what were your options before programming? Because the quality of those options will reflect the quality of your options after programming. How I should rephrase that. The quality of your options before programming will reflect the quality of your options as a programmer, right? So too many people are escaping a kind of a low-wage, dead-end life and trying to get into programming as an escape to that. Now, there are obviously success stories where that happens, but to put it bluntly, if you're a low performer in your previous industry, more than likely you're a low performer in the programming industry. And the question then becomes, well, you just need to find where you fit. Or, I mean, the worst case scenario is maybe you're just a low performer, period. And those characteristics are more because of things like laziness and whatever. But so let me relay to you my experience so you can kind of get a better sense of what I'm trying to articulate. So coming out of college, I went to an Ivy League school, did pretty well there. I wasn't like an all-star, but I made the English list and all that stuff. And I was looking at things like going into business school, law school, or going right into finance or consulting. All right, so business school, law school, that's more school. I wasn't really looking forward to that. But by now I'd be out of both of those and be making easily into six figures. If I had gone straight into finance, it would have been probably an investment banking program or what's called sales and trading. And at that point, I would have done pretty well there. Like I would have been fine. I just didn't want to do those industries. Like they didn't interest me. Or consulting. Places like Booz Allen Hamilton or McKinsey. Like these were the places that I would be looking at. How do I know? Mostly because these are where my peers ended up. So people like me ended up in these places. So, at this point, like I'm over 10 years out of college, right? So like if I was at McKinsey from day one and programming just never entered my life, right? I'd be making a lot of money as a consultant, right? Or if I did the whole law school track, I took it as far as taking the LSAT, the entrance exams for law school. I would have gone to a top 10 law school, and by now I'd be, 6, 7 years into my law school career, whatever, 8 years, however many years, right? So, and at that point, however much money those lawyers make, um, that's what I'd be making right now. I don't know if I'd be partner by now because frankly, the reason I didn't go to law school is because the work didn't appeal to me. Those were my options. Do you understand what I'm trying to articulate? So I'm trading in one set of quote unquote good options for another set of good options or one other good option, which is programming. And that has, turned out fine. So programming pays well, and I don't really have trouble finding the work, and the quality of my clients are very good. Like everything's working out fine there. So the quality of your options is a reflection of, what you're going to end up with on the other end. It's not a perfect correlation. So if you're one of those people who's like, hey, I started as a janitor, now I'm working as a top engineer at Google. Yeah, I get all that. Like there are exceptions to the rule, but I'm talking on a macro scale, right? So some of you have been watching my videos for a long time. You may know that I actually went into teaching right out of college because I didn't know at all what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I took up teaching as like a temporary sort of like way station in between getting my life started in school. And even there, the quality options simply found me. I didn't do anything. The quality options just found me. Now let me explain what I mean by that. First year out as a teacher, high school math teacher, a couple of parents started contacting me saying, "Hey, my kid is really bad at the SAT. We're looking for a tutor. Can you help out my kid?" And that's exactly what I did. I was like, "Yeah, I could use the money because my teaching job literally paid $30,000 a year. I voluntarily took a shit-paying job because I did not want to go to law school. That's how much I didn't want to go." So so I was like, yeah, I'll use the extra money. And I took on a student, and then one student became two, became five, became 10. And by the end of the first year as a teacher, I probably went through around 10 students, billing $60 an hour, and then eventually $80 an hour, and then eventually $100 an hour. And then going into my second year as a teacher, I was making more as a private tutor than as a teacher by a large margin. So what I'm trying to say is the good options found me, right? And then that was sort of the beginning of my like, I was like, wait, I need to adjust course here because there's more money to be made out there and this teaching thing sucks. So I need to figure out, all right, I can sort of use this tutoring money to sort of as like a fallback while I learn programming. That's exactly what I did. Here's my point. Even when I wasn't trying, I wasn't even trying, I started clearing six figures by year two. That's what I mean by the good options found me. I did not have to wait tables. I did not have to be a barista at Starbucks. I did not have to do those shit jobs. And again, I want to be very clear, like I voluntarily took a shit job. Um, Another example is so during this time as a teacher slash tutor, you know, I would go to these, I'd make these house calls to all these rich people, rich people's homes, and lots of investment bankers, lawyers. Well, not so many lawyers. There's more finance guys, hedge fund guys, investment bankers, a couple in high level entertainment. Um, so like ABC executives and a couple NBC executives. A couple of them were very famous people that you see on TV every day. So one example is I was at a high level executive at a hedge fund. I can't remember the name of the fund. And the dad who didn't hire me, the mom hired me. All it's almost all 99% it's the wives pulling these strings. But the dad, I met the dad one day, and he was like, "Hey, you should come by the office. We're looking for more quant guys. Quant is short for quantitative." And he was like, you're smart, and you have a sharp head, and like you should stop by the office, and I'd like to introduce you to some of my people. And if this is the sort of thing that you think you want to do, we'd love to explore that possibility. I wasn't even trying, is my point, and I was out. That wasn't an offer. I mean, I ended up not doing that anyway, but that's not an offer. But the point is, like, that was a route I could have at least explored. And again, I wasn't trying. I was just making a house call, doing the tutoring for SATs that I was paid to do that day, right? So the good options, if you're of a certain caliber of individual, will find you almost no matter what you do. The only way that's not going to happen is if you just hole up into a wall and just like disconnect yourself from the world, right? And ironically, as a programmer, you could very well do that. But if you're out and about in a metro area, I was in New York City, and but when I was a teacher, it was all my clients, all my tutoring clients were New York City hedge fund guys and finance guys and stuff like that. Um, you will be identified, and people will make the appropriate moves. As I get older, and at that point I was like 22, 23. I didn't know shit about the world. As I get older, I'm finding out exactly how hard it is to find good people. It is extreme. It is the hardest thing you will do. Finding good people is insanely hard, right? So if you're in that category, the right decision makers will find you and make the right moves. So going back to this individual, what was his life like before programming, before going to a boot camp? Waiting tables over a year, bartending. These aren't bad jobs. I'm not putting down the jobs, but is it fair to say that he did those jobs because he had no other options? That's only he can answer that. Only this person can answer that. So if you're watching my video, is that the reason why you waited tables? I mean, there's a reason why I didn't wait tables or I didn't work at Starbucks, right? And keep in mind, at the time, I was just out of college. I was at that age where that's where you're going to be working at Starbucks at 22 to 28 or whatever, right? And I didn't do that because I was making way more money as showing kids how to answer fucking math questions on the SAT. And eventually that got really mindless and boring for me, so I moved away from that. I don't tutor anymore. It's been years since I've done that, but um, you get my point. Um, I didn't, end up walking dogs. Like those were not on my table because I didn't have to be. And an important point is that I wasn't even trying. Very important to understand. And like I said, I kind of fell into six figures on year 2 of my teaching career. I just kind of fell into it because all the parents are like, hire Quan, hire Quan, hire Quan, right? And so that's a reflection of what your life is going to be like post programming. Now, as a programmer, that dynamic hasn't really changed. It's more or less the same. Uh, I'm constantly trying to balance multiple clients and like trying to keep things at a level where I can simply manage. My problem is too much work. I've got too much I'm trying to balance. It's the exact opposite problem this individual is having, right? And so that's a correlation between my experience before and my experience after, right? And that's never going to change unless I just tap out of the game altogether. So this is more of a sobering reality you have to explore. This is not as a positive message in my last response, but it's something people need to hear, right? Are you escaping a life by trying to get into programming? Are you pursuing a programming career in order to escape a life? I mean, to a certain extent, I was doing the same, but the life I was escaping are considered good options to a lot of other people, and that's fine. It's kind of like, I don't. Some athletes don't want to play baseball because they'd rather play football at the professional level. Like they can do either, but they don't want to play baseball. They'd rather play football at the professional level, or vice versa. Whatever, you get the idea, right? So, those people are choosing one life of one, or foregoing one very good life for another very good life. I'll just give you one actual example. A player named Todd Helton, who's one of the best pure hitters in Major League history. He's a very pure hitter. He's a line drive hitter. He could have played professional football. He was the quarterback at Tennessee ahead of Peyton Manning. In other words, Peyton Manning backed up Todd Helton. Just think about that, right? So Todd Helton could have played football at the professional level, but he chose baseball. Now, is he escaping a life? Is he like, oh, I'm so glad I can play baseball because otherwise my life would have been stocking grocery shelves? No, he would have been making millions as a football player. You get kind of what I'm trying to say here? The correlations are strong. If you're a good athlete in A, you're probably a good athlete in B, right? So, I am a very quantitative thinker and a very analytical thinker. So those skills can be applied to, analyze, doing, finance or programming, right? And in either direction, those options were essentially on the table, or law or whatever, right? So options that were not on the table for me are things like going into entertainment, or being like someone in front of the camera. Like one thing I would have pursued if I really thought I could have is going into like sports, working as like an anchor on ESPN, something like that. I don't know. Maybe I was a little bit too down on myself as far as that goes. Maybe I could have done that, but I don't think I don't have the right assets for that. I don't have an effusive personality. I'm not a camera. I'm not like a camera attractive guy. I mean, I don't mean attractive like good looking. I mean like I don't have an outgoing personality is the best way I can put it. I see a lot of those guys on SportsCenter and they're just like outgoing. They're very personable. They're funny, stuff like that. I really don't have any of those things. So, and that's fine. So what I found out is like that's not an option for me. So if I pursue that, I'm going to be up against a lot of resistance. I'm going to have to work 10 times harder, 20 times harder to get the same opportunities. And to a lot of people's credit, they do that. So what that means is if you are dead set on pursuing this programming track, that might be the answer for you. You might have to work 10 times harder. Does that make sense? You might have to work so much harder than a person like me to get the same opportunities. It's not fair. That's just what it is. there's fairness has nothing to do with this. That's just what it is. So, or just tap out, and maybe you did make a mistake, and you might have to figure out another line of work. You might have to, if you're dead set on this programming thing, you might have to just work so much harder. And there are people I've known who have successfully done that, but even for them, they're not working at the Googles or the Facebooks making $200,000, $250K. They're just scraping by at 65,000, 70,000 in New York City, San Francisco, which is a shit wage in New York City or San Francisco. Just understand that. I don't know where you're watching this video, but 70,000 in New York City does not take you very far. So understand the wage scales here. And you might have to work 10 times harder to do. Whereas for me, I mistake my way into $70,000. Like, I just don't do anything. I'll make it. Like, you see the difference? So like, that's my baseline. Like, the contracts will just come in on a baseline with doing nothing at all. The contracts will just come in at around 75, 80K a year. And like, that's why I take more chances in life. That's why I do other stuff, like this turbo thing and whatever, because I have that opportunity. So I guess the main message here is, are you escaping a shit life? And if so, why is that? And what were your opportunities in life prior to programming that don't involve programming? What was the quality of your life? What opportunities presented themselves, right? And then you'll get a better sense of kind of your baseline. If the only jobs you can get out of college were waiting tables and bartending and things of that sort, and you just couldn't get anything else, you have to understand what that's saying about you, how the world perceives you, and maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not. That's only something you can answer. But you have to see how it is for other people, how it was for me. Again, I just sort of fell into $100,000 plus second year as a teacher. I was not even trying. And my programming life right now is not too dissimilar. Just one contract ends, another one begins. I'm juggling 2, 3, 4. Just, that's it. And I always have too much. Never the opposite, which is the problem you're experiencing. So this is another way of looking at a similar situation as my previous response video, but the perspective or the conclusions are slightly different. You have to understand how to look at it. And so, whereas the previous guy, the coding disaster guy, this video right here was a little bit premature in his sort of pessimism. This individual might be a little bit more accurate, and he needs to evaluate. I'm trying to show how to make those evaluations. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, here's my email if you want to reach out to me for any questions. And like I said, any questions that kind of hit a broad category that a lot of people are asking